We have sad news to report out of the film industry tonight. Actress Hayden Panettiere has died at the age of 36, her father confirming her passing just a short time ago. Panettiere was known for her roles in the hit shows Heroes and Nashville.
On the afternoon of August 16, 2026, emergency crews were called to a home in Greenville, South Carolina, after a report of an unresponsive woman. When they arrived, they found Hayden Panettiere in cardiac arrest. Paramedics tried to revive her, but she was pronounced dead at the scene. She was 36 years old, just 5 days shy of her 37th birthday. Within hours, the news had traveled across every entertainment outlet in the country, and fans who had grown up watching her on screen were left trying to process the loss of someone who had, in many ways, been a fixture of their own childhoods. Her father, Alan "Skip" Panettiere, a retired fire captain, released a short statement asking the public for privacy while the family grieved. He described his daughter as a radiant presence who brought joy to everyone around her, both to the people who knew her personally and to the millions who had watched her career unfold since she was a small child. That plea for space was almost impossible to grant, given how quickly the news spread and how many people felt a personal connection to her work. The circumstances surrounding her death are still being sorted out. The Greenville County Coroner's Office confirmed that an autopsy was completed the following day and found no signs of trauma, ruling out any indication that she had been physically harmed. Investigators said early evidence pointed away from foul play, though the official cause of death has not been finalized and remains pending toxicology results and further review. Some outlets reported that dispatch communications referenced a possible overdose, but authorities have been careful to note that this has not been confirmed as the cause of death. What is known is that she had traveled to South Carolina with her longtime on-and-off partner, actor Brian Hickerson, the weekend before she died. Tributes began pouring in almost as soon as the news broke. Viola Davis, who had worked alongside her in the 2016 film Custody, wrote a heartfelt message describing her as someone who had risen from hardship with real strength and grace. Colleagues from Bring It On, Heroes, and Nashville posted similar tributes that same evening, many of them describing a warmth and generosity in private that did not always come through in her public interviews. Several people who had worked behind the scenes on Nashville specifically recalled how she made a point of remembering the names and family details of everyone on set, down to the camera crew and background performers, a small habit that resurfaced again and again in the hours after her death became public knowledge. To understand why her death has hit so many people so hard, it helps to look back at just how long she had been part of the public's life. Hayden Leslie Panettiere was born on August 21, 1989, in Palisades, New York. Her mother, Leslie Fogel, had worked as a soap opera actress before shifting into managing her daughter's budding career, and her father worked as a firefighter. Hayden began booking commercial work before she was even a year old, and by the time she was 4, she had a recurring role on the daytime drama One Life to Live. She later moved to Guiding Light, where her character's fight with leukemia became a storyline that resonated with young viewers and earned her recognition from a leukemia charity, a detail that rarely comes up now, but shaped how audiences first connected with her. Her film career picked up steam through her childhood and teenage years. She lent her voice to Princess Dot in Pixar's A Bug's Life, played opposite Denzel Washington in Remember the Titans, and starred in family-friendly films like Ice Princess and Raising Helen. But it was 2006 that changed everything for her. At 15, she was cast as Claire Bennett, the indestructible cheerleader at the center of NBC's ensemble drama Heroes. The role turned her into one of the most recognizable young actresses on television and kept her in the spotlight for 4 seasons. When the show wrapped in 2010, she moved almost seamlessly into the role of Juliet Barnes on ABC's Nashville, playing a fiercely ambitious country singer over a 6-season run that earned her 2 Golden Globe nominations and cemented her as one of the defining faces of that show's era. She kept working steadily after Nashville ended. She returned to the Scream franchise for Scream 4 and later Scream 6, lent her voice to the character Kyrie across the Kingdom Hearts video game series, and voiced a character in the animated film Alpha and Omega. Her most recent credited role came earlier this year in the direct-to-video thriller Sleepwalker, a modest final chapter to a career that spanned more than 3 decades and touched nearly every corner of the entertainment industry, from daytime soap operas to blockbuster horror sequels to animated games aimed at a completely different generation of fans. Her formal schooling ended earlier than most of her peers. After attending South Orangetown Middle School in New York, she transitioned to private tutors starting in 9th grade, a common path for young performers whose filming schedules made a traditional classroom impossible to maintain. She has said in past interviews that she once considered stepping back from acting to pursue a more conventional education, but the momentum of landing Heroes made that idea impractical at the time. Her family background includes Italian ancestry along with some English and German roots, something she occasionally referenced when asked about her last name, which is regularly mispronounced and translates loosely to Baker in Italian. Given how long and varied her career was, it is no surprise that estimates of what she leaves behind financially vary widely, with reported figures ranging anywhere from roughly $6 million to $15 million. Much of that fortune reportedly traces back to her years on Nashville, where she was said to earn around $75,000 per episode across more than 100 episodes, a sum that alone would account for several $1 million of her career earnings. Her time on Heroes and her role in Scream 4 added several million more, and none of those figures include her years as the face of brands like Neutrogena, Kohl's, and Dunay & Bag, for which she once helped design a limited edition handbag. She also bought and sold property over the years, including a Hollywood Hills home she purchased in 2008 and later sold for a profit, along with a Nashville property she sold in 2018 around the same period her personal life was becoming more turbulent behind the scenes. Money was never the full picture of who she was. Long before most of her peers were thinking about causes beyond their own careers, an 18-year-old Panettiere was already using her platform to take real risks. In 2007, acting as spokesperson for a marine conservation campaign, she joined activists who paddled into a cove in Taiji, Japan, in an attempt to disrupt the town's annual dolphin hunt. Fishermen pushed the activists back toward shore, and the confrontation was later featured in the Oscar-winning documentary that exposed the hunt to a global audience. She was reportedly the subject of an arrest warrant from Japanese authorities afterward, a claim she addressed candidly in interviews, and she received an award from an animal rights organization later that year for her involvement. She returned to Taiji in 2010, again attempting to meet with local officials, and continued speaking out publicly against commercial whaling in the years that followed, delivering letters to foreign ambassadors and becoming a vegetarian as part of her broader commitment to animal welfare causes. Her personal life, meanwhile, unfolded with far less predictability than her career. She began dating Ukrainian heavyweight boxing champion Vladimir Klitschko in 2009, and the two were on and off for years before getting engaged in 2013. In December 2014, she gave birth to their daughter, Kaya, in Hawaii. The relationship eventually ended, and in 2018 Panettiere made the decision to give Klitschko full custody of Kaya while she focused on treatment for alcoholism, substance abuse, and severe postpartum depression, a condition she later spoke about candidly in interviews and which reportedly cost her a long-standing endorsement deal after she discussed it publicly. Kaya, now 11, grew up primarily in Europe with her father, though Panettiere has said in past interviews that the two stayed close through visits and long calls, describing their bond as one that went well beyond surface-level conversation despite the distance between them. Her relationship with Brian Hickison, which began not long after her split from Klitschko, was marked by a documented history of legal trouble. He was arrested in 2019 on a domestic violence charge that was later dismissed after the couple reconciled, then arrested again in 2020 on a separate domestic violence allegation. By mid-2020, he faced multiple felony charges tied to the relationship, including counts of injuring a partner and assault with a deadly weapon. Panettiere spoke out publicly at the time, saying she hoped sharing her experience might help others recognize the signs of an abusive relationship and find the courage to leave. Hickison ultimately pleaded no contest to 2 felony counts in 2021 and received a jail sentence, probation, mandatory counseling, and a 5-year protective order. The two nonetheless reconciled in the years that followed, and reports indicate they were together again in the days before her death. She also served for years on the celebrity board of a well-known children's charity connected to Ronald McDonald House, and she took part in charity auctions built around ocean conservation, at one point offering a private dinner and whale-watching outing with herself to raise funds for the cause. Those who followed her activism closely have pointed out that her willingness to physically put herself in the middle of a conflict in Taiji, rather than simply lending her name to a cause from a distance, set her apart from a lot of celebrity advocacy of that era, which tended to stop at a public statement or a single appearance. Grief was a constant companion in her adult life well before this latest loss. In February 2023, her younger brother Jansen Panettiere, also an actor, died suddenly at 28 from complications related to an undiagnosed heart condition. She later described the loss as devastating in ways she struggled to put into words, and she wrote extensively about her brother's death and the guilt that lingered afterward in the memoir she released this past May, titled This Is Me, A Reckoning. The book covered her postpartum depression, her struggles with addiction, the abuse she endured in her relationship, and the grief of losing her brother, all described with a level of honesty that surprised many longtime fans who had only known her through her on-screen roles. She toured to promote it earlier this year, appearing more grounded and self-assured in interviews than she had in years, which is part of what has made the timing of her death feel so jarring to people who had followed her recent appearances closely. What she leaves behind resists any single, tidy summary. There is an estate valued somewhere between $6 and $15 million, depending on which financial breakdown you trust. There is a body of work spanning more than 3 decades, touching nearly every format the industry has to offer. There is a daughter who will grow up with her mother's own words preserved in a memoir rather than only second-hand accounts. And there is a family that buried her younger brother just 3 years earlier, now facing another devastating loss and once again asking the public for the privacy to grieve. She is survived by her daughter, Kaya, her mother, Leslie Fogel, and her father, Skip Panettiere. Beyond the financial figures, there is a version of her legacy that has nothing to do with money at all. It belongs to a teenager who paddled into a cove in Japan because she believed the cause mattered more than her own comfort, a mother who made an agonizing decision about custody because she believed it was best for her child, and a woman who spent the final months of her life putting the hardest chapters of her own life into print, in the hope that someone else struggling with the same things might feel a little less alone. Whatever investigators in South Carolina eventually determine about the cause of her death, that part of what she leaves behind is already permanent, printed in her own words, in a book that will continue to be read long after the current wave of headlines fades. Like, subscribe, and follow for more.